Hi, everyone. This is Gary Berman, host of the Cyber Hero Adventure Show. Today, we have a very special micro briefing with Rob Allen, the Chief Product Officer of ThreatLocker. And we're going to be talking about some of the challenges and opportunities confronting this crazy digital universe in which we all occupy. Hey, Rob, welcome to the show.
Hey, Gary, thank you for having us.
Indeed. So the reason that I'm very excited about listening and learning from you, and I'm sure our audience will be as well, is in part the fact that you have for quite some time leaned into the notion of cyber heroes in your, external and internal communications. So of course, a very happy light bulb went off in our brain. So how did you come to that idea? What makes your team members cyber heroes?
I mean, look, obviously I'm biased on the subject, and you'll probably be thinking, well, he would say that, but our cyber hero team, our support team are without a shadow, without the best in the business. My own background, I worked for an IT company for more years than I care to remember. So I've been on the other side of the fence and dealing with vendors and support, and you log a ticket with Microsoft and somebody comes back to you 3 days later going, hey, is this still a problem? That kind of thing doesn't cut it. The nature of our business is people need support when they need support, not
Indeed.
a couple of days later. So the cyber heroes, they're 24/7, 365. They're based out of the office here in Orlando. Our average response time to chats is, I think, somewhere about the 20-second mark.
Wow.
So yeah, and you get to speak to a human being. You're not speaking to a bot. You know what I mean? It's not AI. It's an actual human being on the other end of the chat, somebody who will solve your problem immediately. So as I said, they are the best in the business, which is basically why we call them the cyber heroes.
That's a wonderful explanation. And, the interesting thing about dwell time is how it's really come down. This is the first that I've heard 20 seconds. I mean, what are the technological requirements to be able to execute on something so
well,
amazing?
Obviously, bodies is a large part of it. I think the support team is about 60 strong. So you need to have technical resources. You need to have people available to be answering those chats. As I said, we don't depend on AI. We don't want bots talking to people because realistically, and again, I've been the person speaking to bots, and there's no happy outcomes from speaking to a bot unless you can say, I want to speak to a human being right now. But why put that barrier in place? Just let customers talk to somebody who can solve their problems immediately.
One of the interesting things that relate to what you're saying is there's some legislation pending about applications, and it has to be the same amount of time or inputs that it takes to sign up for something. You need to be able to get support in the equal number of or equal amount of effort. So
that's a really good idea. That's a really good idea.
Interesting. So can I deduce from your accent, you're from England or Ireland?
I was going to get really offended there for a second, Gary, but you brought it back at the last moment, so I'm Irish. Yeah, one thing never to say to an Irish person is, you from England? Yeah, no, I'm from Ireland.
And where did you develop your sense of humor, such as it is?
What sense of humor? No, you have to have a sense of humor, Gary. You have to have a sense of humor.
We're laughing, but it is true. One of the things, as part of my sort of Forrest Gump journey into cybersecurity, was right away I could just tell how stressed out members of the community are, and the relentlessness of it. It's easy to get burnt out. It's an unfair playing field. Or let me check with you to see if you think so. Which is, criminals seem to be horizontally structured. They share information, threat information, hacks freely. But the defenders are vertically structured. They're encumbered by intellectual property things, or financial considerations, or the patchwork of state, local, federal, global regulatory constructs. What's your assessment about sort of the battlefield in which all these things are taking place?
Well, I suppose first of all to mention, so again, my background being an IT guy, probably for 6 of the last 10 years, one of the things that I did was cleaning up the effects of ransomware. Now, fortunately, at that time, ransomware was just files get encrypted. So it was pretty much just a cleanup operation. So it was, restore from backups, shadow copies, all that kind of stuff. It was when these ransomware gangs weren't as persistent or as effective or as scary as they are right now. So that was obviously frustrating. And there was always the nagging doubt in the back of your mind as an IT guy, what could I have done to stop this? How could I have protected my customer from these effects? I mean, to your specific point about how bad guys think and cooperate and everything else, I heard a great description once, and I honestly can't attribute it to somebody in particular, but it was basically that defenders think inside the box, hackers operate outside the box. I think in a lot of cases that is pretty much true, because if you're expecting somebody to operate within a particular, set of restrictions, that doesn't happen. It absolutely doesn't happen. So
that's right.
You can't be that structured in your defense. So again, from our perspective, you can't be looking for the same threats. You can't be looking for the same known bad things, because there's so many unknown bad things out there that strategy has been proven not to work time and time and time again.
Indeed. And to build on that point, one of the things that we've always focused on is national security, and that's such a massive thing. What could we do? And then we started drilling down a little bit into critical infrastructure. So you have 16 CISA critical infrastructure designations at the moment. Is your solution or solutions, do they focus on a particular sector, such as, water or transportation or financial services, or does it cut across various sectors?
Absolutely applies to every sector. I mean, I suppose the point is that, as I said, traditional approaches have been proven not to work. So trying to find all the bad stuff just isn't a sustainable or successful strategy. So the approach that we take, which is effectively zero trust or deny by default, so basically blocking everything that isn't explicitly allowed. I mean, obviously, things like attacks on hospitals are happening more and more often. I had a radio interview on Monday with Texas, or somebody in Texas, basically on this exact subject. So it was, are these attacks on hospitals becoming more and more prevalent? And unfortunately, the short answer is yes, because they're seen as soft targets, and they also have a lot of sensitive information. And the more sensitive information, hypothetically or potentially, the more valuable it is to a bad guy if they get their hands on it, because a hospital is going to be more likely to pay ostensibly for somebody to delete data that is, personal, that is medical information, than just your average bill or, average company down the road. But as I said, the problem is universal. The fact that traditional defenses and traditional approaches to cybersecurity are not working is a universal problem. And realistically, in our eyes, the solution is a universal solution, which is, again, not to allow everything to run. Just mentioned, by the way, and one of my, and I know favorite is a terrible word to use in the context of cyber attacks and something that could have been very serious and dangerous, but one of my favorite cyber attacks over the last number of years was one on on a water system, a water treatment facility here in Florida.
Yeah, Oldsmar.
I can't remember the name, but basically the guy, and I always picture Homer Simpson in this particular circumstance, but basically a guy was sitting and he noticed that the levels of the chemicals were being adjusted on the screen in front of him. Now, that was described in many places as an advanced cyber attack.
No, it wasn't.
It was TeamViewer.
Right.
TeamViewer running on a machine in a water treatment facility that somebody got into and went, oh, I wonder what these things do. Now, that's a really great example of what we're talking about, which is TeamViewer in a situation like that is not something that an AV is going to pick up. It's not something that an EDR is going to stop, because
that's
fundamentally it's just TeamViewer. It's not malicious. It's not bad. Now, can it be used maliciously? Absolutely. But in this particular case, it basically was just a otherwise good application that was being used to bad ends. And there's a million different examples like that. I mean, TeamViewer is one. Obviously, any remote access tool, basically being able to run on a machine without any restrictions, is a danger. But like, say, AnyDesk is the remote access tool of choice by ransomware gangs, because it's quick, it's easy, it's small, it doesn't get picked up by AV or EDR. So, like, why not use it? But we've seen circumstances where things like WinRAR, for example. I mean, WinRAR is just compression software. It's, it's basically just a good ordinary piece of software, but it can be used to encrypt data.
That's
and
right.
It can be used to exfiltrate data. So we've seen instances where WinRAR is the exfiltration and encryption tool of choice of these gangs. So again, something that traditional approaches basically either don't do anything about or can't do anything about. Default Deny steps in and says, right, well, you don't need to worry about WinRAR or AnyDesk or TeamViewer running on your machines if you block everything by default, or everything, I should say, that's not explicitly allowed.
Yeah, exactly. Over the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, I've had the opportunity to interview John Kenderberg, who's one of the early proponents of zero trust architecture and things like that. And it's true. You can't kind of trust anybody. But, you said two things I just want to follow up on. First is the notion of healthcare, as a vulnerable system. And I've spent some time on this because it can be life and death. And we created a comic called Defending Your Health to, shine the light on digital medical device security, and just all these different points of vulnerability within hospitals. The thing that I would like to ask you about is, how do you change the priorities of something like a hospital? Because that's not their mission, cybersecurity. Their mission is life and death, and to serve patients. And how do they divert resources into, something like information technology or cyber?
Well, unfortunately, these attacks, now, again, it depends on the nature of the attack. In some cases, ransomware involves running ransomware, encrypting files, destroying data. They are obviously the most destructive. They are the ones that shut hospitals down. And people don't realize how many different parts of a hospital are actually running off, computers. So everything from obviously medical equipment to, door readers, card access systems, that kind of stuff. Now, if you literally can't get people in the door of your hospital, how do you have a functioning hospital? I mean, quite simply, you don't.
That's
And
right.
I've heard of situations, and we have people who are organizations that are now customers who have been to that extent impacted. I mean, literally, there isn't a car in the car park because the hospitals have said, we can't get you in. There's no point in coming here today. So they're sending patients to other hospitals. And in some cases, in remote areas, that could be 300, 400, 500 miles away.
Yes.
So obviously that's a serious issue. I've also, and the other type, or the other part of a lot of these cyber attacks, as I mentioned earlier, is about exfiltrating data. So it's about double extortion. So we're going to steal your stuff. We want you to pay us to delete it. And we're also going to encrypt your stuff. And to be honest, in a lot of cases, the encryption now is more of a way of saying, hey, we've been in, we've got access, we've got all your data. It's not really a fundamental or core part of it. I mean, 90-something% of ransomware attacks now include the threat to leak exfiltrated data. Now, we had a really interesting case with a customer. Now, I'm probably going to butcher the description or explanation of this, but basically a customer of ours, customer of theirs, hospital, was breached. Now, it was one of these situations where access to their environment was basically for sale on the dark web. So somebody had exploited a vulnerability in a firewall, I believe it was, and basically said, right, you've got access to this environment. Here's your, domain credentials, everything. Now, the hospital was part of a bigger network of hospitals. So say there was 9 or 10 different hospitals in this particular area, but basically the bad guys got into the big one.
Wow.
Right? Now, the big one was running ThreatLocker. Okay, so basically they were trying to do their nefarious things. They were trying to exfiltrate data. They were trying to encrypt files. They were trying to spin up virtual machines to do more stuff with, all of which basically was blocked. Again, not because we decided it was good or bad, but because blocking things is what we do. Applying controls is what we do. So what happened in that particular case was the attackers then pivoted to one of the smaller hospitals in the network that was not as well protected. So they were able to do whatever they wanted. They were able to encrypt, or they were able to exfiltrate data. Basically, there was nothing stopping them from doing what they were trying to do. But the really interesting part of this story is that we spoke to the hospital in question, and they actually gave us screenshots from the email negotiation back and forth between the hospital and the ransomware operators. And speaking of good support, by the way, and I know I say ThreatLockers is the best in the business, you would be amazed at how professional these organizations are. They've got chat functionality. They've got, they're really, really helpful. They will give you advice as to how to not get hit again in the future as part of their service. But the really interesting thing was that I have a snippet of part of an email that was sent by the ransomware gang to the hospital. And they said, we were in the main hospital, but we found you were running ThreatLocker and we weren't able to use your machines for our purpose. So we pivoted. We moved to the softer target. And I just thought that was really, really, really interesting. But unfortunately, I mean, some organizations, it takes an event for them to take things seriously. It takes something big happening for them to go, oh, we better spend some money on this, or we could be the next hospital that's shut down and sending, patients to 300, 400, 500 miles away.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Boy, talk about a sort of an unwanted client-ish testimonial. I mean,
yeah, it was. And the other interesting thing about it was, and in this case, it was just about data. So there was no encryption, there was no downtime for the hospital. It was literally just about the data. They ended up paying for the ransomware gang to delete their data. Wow. Now, my advice in all circumstances is never pay the ransom, because if you pay the ransom, you are doing two things. You are perpetuating the issue, because if they didn't get paid, there would be no point in them doing it, right? There would be no such thing as ransomware if ransomware gangs didn't get paid. Yeah. But the other thing is, first of all, you're basically dealing with criminals. So are you going to believe them when they say, hey, yeah, we've deleted your data? I mean, maybe they've shared it with other groups. Maybe they say they deleted and don't delete it. I mean, very often they will come back, even if they say they've deleted your data, they'll come back in 6 months' time and go, hey, remember that data we said we deleted? We actually didn't.
That's right.
Give us more money. Because basically all you've done by paying is advertised yourselves as payers, and also made yourself more likely to get hit in future, because other ransomware gangs will go, oh, look, Hospital A just paid $300,000. Let's us go after Hospital A and see if we can get paid too. So paying the ransom is never the right solution, no matter how desperate or dire the situation is.
Yeah, I've done several shows with the FBI and things about this, and I've seen it, kind of evolve to where now, they lead with, well, it's your decision. We can understand the business rationale for wanting to get up and running, but we advise to not pay.
Mm-hmm. And so, as I said, that is my advice as well. This will not stop as long as they can get money out of this. It will not stop. They will not stop attacking.
Yeah. So in your role as Chief Product Officer, let's drill down into, some of the solutions and some of the technical, aspects of what you do. What's the best way to describe how you spend a typical day? And, in your role as Chief Product Officer, and you're smiling, which means there's no such thing as a typical day.
No, absolutely. There is no such thing as a typical day. I mean, look, there's always work to be done. It is obviously really fast paced because the attackers are not slowing down. So we can't slow down in terms of building products and services that will protect organizations. One of the good things, I suppose, about the approach that we take is fundamentally, as I said, we deny by default. So we are allow listing. We're about only allowing things that are needed to run and blocking everything else. We expand on that principle with what we call ring fencing, which is basically only allowing applications do what they need to do and stopping them from, stop Office from calling PowerShell or stop PowerShell from reaching out to the internet, that kind of stuff. But again, it's about controls. It's about, controlling behavior of software fundamentally on people's machines. But because of the nature of what we do, because our attitude or because our approach is to block first, we don't have to respond to individual threats. We don't have to be looking at how a particular ransomware gang is operating and what IP addresses they are communicating with, and what techniques and tactics they're using, because in a lot of cases we're blocking the stuff anyway. So we don't have to respond. We don't have to, generally speaking, change what we do to adapt it for particular techniques, which is a great thing. But it also gives us scope to build on what we've already got. So we can basically improve what we already do, because obviously I'm of the opinion that we are the best in the business at the approach that we take. But we can also add additional functionality and things that people are looking for, that customers want. So as an example, we have, and again, our main approach is about control. It's not about detection. So it's proactive rather than reactive. But we have added detection to our arsenal of late. Now, there's a really good reason for that, which is even though we're blocking most of the stuff, if not all of the stuff that's happening, organizations still want to know when they're under attack. So if there are indicators of compromise, if they see, a user has tried to run AnyDesk randomly, or, an event log gets cleared in a server, or there's been an incoming RDP connection on a particular machine, they want to know about these things, even though, as I said, typically we're going to block them by default. So we've added detection, and we've also added an MDR to back it up. So basically human beings looking at alerts, as I said, sitting in our office here in Orlando in Florida, basically watching our customers' backs for them. Because as going back to what you said at the very start, which is attackers don't sleep. Okay, so just because your organization works from 9 to 5 doesn't mean that the people who are attacking you are working from 9 to 5.
That's
I
right.
mean, obviously, I can't remember the statistics, but a huge proportion of ransomware attacks will take place or be perpetuated outside of business hours. A lot of
Friday afternoons.
Yeah, and absolutely, and especially they love a holiday weekend. They love a holiday weekend because people are going off, they're on their boats, they're out of the office, they're not there, they're not watching things like, EDRs and so on. And realistically, if you're not monitoring something 24/7, 365, it's as good as useless. Indeed. Because the stuff going on that you need to know about, that you're, as I said, out in a lake in a boat, or, up the mountains or whatever, that you're not going to be able to respond to. So as I said, that's why the addition of MDR as a solution for our customers has been so popular, and one that's been taken up so rapidly.
So let's talk about your customers. I'm assuming, and correct me if this is not the case, that you focus on enterprises primarily, or so unpack that for us, because I personally am very interested in small to mid-sized businesses. About 80% of them and there are millions of them across all these sectors.
Absolutely.
And they're just like sitting ducks, in my opinion. And we are working right now on trying to see if we could do something to help at scale. So what is your customer profile, I guess, is maybe a way of saying it.
So I haven't checked recently, but at last count, we basically operate in about 50,000 organizations.
Wow.
So that's everything from your mom and pop shop that's managed by a MSP with 4 or 5 computers, up to organizations with hundreds of thousands of machines. Now, the reason we can do that is because, unlike similar tools, and again, not naming any names, but similar sort of allow listing tools, we make it manageable. We make it easy. We take a lot of the heavy lifting out of it through a variety of different methods, but basically it's something that is attainable for even small organizations to do. So I suppose that's the uniqueness of our solution. It's not just for big enterprises, although we do obviously have big enterprises as customers. It's also, as I said, small companies. Somebody's got a couple of machines, they've got an MSP minding it for them or looking after it for them. But it's basically everything from tiny to huge. The only thing is, obviously with most solutions, it requires a degree of management. It's not a set it and forget it solution. So it's not like, you could get it on your computer, Gary, and not manage it. You know what I mean? It's something that needs to be looked after. Now, it's as I said, it's not difficult. We take a lot of the heavy lifting out of it, but as long as somebody's got, you know, an IT person looking after their environment, fundamentally our solution will work.
Well, you just were kind enough to open the door, and I'm walking right through it. Sign me up. I want to try it.
Fantastic.
And I'll try it. And, you know, I'm just like a regular small business owner, and, you know, I do superhero comics and other things. So my level of technical acumen is, you know, modest at best. You know, I mean it. Sign me up, and then what I'll do is I'll do a follow-up show. I've never done this now in 9 years, but first time, and I'll let the audience know, like, how'd it go? Or
that would be phenomenal. We would absolutely love that, Gary. I'll work with you myself on getting you set up and secured.
Wow, thanks a lot. That'd be amazing. So as we're wrapping up, how does our audience get more information about ThreatLocker and some of your products and things like that?
So basically all the things. So our website, obviously, ThreatLocker.com. We are on LinkedIn, active on LinkedIn. We're active on YouTube, Twitter, X, Facebook, basically all the things. We're there. We do webinars quite often, which are often entertaining and always, I think, educational. So again, just check out our YouTube channel for that. But as I said, basically check out the website. I'm not sure if we have any special links or anything for you specifically.
We'll put something in there. Yeah, and maybe we could do a webinar or something down the road.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay. Well, Rob Allen, Chief Product Officer at ThreatLocker. On behalf of a grateful digital universe, thanks for who you are and for what you and your colleagues do, and most importantly, why you do it. And to our audience, stay tuned for more from the Cyber Hero Adventure Show.
Thanks, Gary.